Hello, in this video I would like to talk about desires, pleasure, making a list of what you want, focusing on what you want. That is normally considered a bit of a ludic activity, kind of the opposite of personal development, the opposite of doing therapy. What happened actually is that in recent years, at least in North of Europe where I work, there has been, but I think it's wider, to be honest, there has been a realization that when you work with someone focusing on what's wrong, it's really difficult. It's like walking up a mountain. So if someone comes and say, I'm really sad about this, I'm really disappointed about this, I'm really dissatisfied about this, and you go and go deeper into, that sadness, that dissatisfaction, that's really lengthy. The process of healing, it's really, there's a lot of effort, both also for the therapist, actually. It's a kind of a heavy way to approach things. What has been found is that if you focus on what do you want instead, if you focus on what is your desire, if you focus on what actually gives you pleasure, motivates you, makes you happy, that you can achieve the same result in a quicker way, with much more ease and enjoyment somehow. And that's a really interesting development in therapy land. Also because the objective is the same, because when you focus on something that is really difficult at the moment, what you want is to get when it's better. But normally you used to focus on what was difficult, trusting that once you focused enough on what was difficult, you would come to what's better. What do you want instead? Now we kind of jump that step, well, many of us do, and we focus a lot on, and what do you want? That maybe it's, maybe you don't expect to hear that, but I find that for many people, it's really difficult to answer the question, what would you like? What is your preference? How do you see your life when this problem is solved? These are the most difficult question to answer. It's really difficult to move from the place of the suffering to the place of the solution, to everything that would be different. And that says a lot with how much we identified. So it was not just in therapy, there was a kind of probably wider identification with problems. So I am my problems instead of I am my solution, I am my desire. Where do I want to be? And here is there is a specification that it's important to make. When from a place of suffering we look at what we would like with the attitude of it's not here yet, I may never get it, it's gonna be so much work to even come close to try to get it, that drags you down. What I'm talking about is thinking about something you would really like and enjoying the anticipation of that, enjoying thinking, what could I do now already to prepare myself for? Or what are the steps? How can I make it happen slowly? Or even just fantasize about that if it is something that is not that, not everything is really to be plain in step by step, but really enjoying the idea of having that desire, enjoying the ability of your imagination to concoct such images, such desires. That's a bit the real change. Because as I said, if you desire from a place of it's not here yet, from a place of scarcity, that you're still functioning from a perspective of the problem. If you manage to enjoy having the desire, that's a bit different. That's where it gets fun, if I can say that, because growing personal development can also be fun. And I want to make another specification. That does not mean that there is no space for expressing the pain. There are situations in which your need is to express the pain. So your desire is to have someone that listens to you while you express your pain. Sometimes your desire is a listening ear, and that's okay, and that can happen. In therapy, in life, that's always possible. And sometimes it's needed, and sometimes it's done because you think that's what's needed. You think that's what you have to do. And in that space of, do I need this or don't I do that? Do I need it or not? That is the space where you can look for a bit more space and say, what if instead of telling all the stories of what's not right, I talk about what I would like it instead, what I would like to have instead. So in therapy, there is this really, I think it's called the wonder question, and I'm not sure what is the origin, but I've heard it few times in few trainings being mentioned, so it must be a thing. The wonder question is, imagine that tonight during your sleep, a fairy comes and sparkle fairy dust on you. And the fairy dust is going to take all your problems away, or that specific problem you're dealing with. When you wake up tomorrow, you don't know that the fairy came, but the problem is gone. What do you notice then? And then the exercise is to try to imagine, what would I notice? If the problem is backache, you probably come out of bed much more easily. Maybe you feel like sport in the morning. And maybe even your mood change. But if your problem is different, more on an emotional level, it takes a bit of effort to imagine how that would play out, how would it feel like, how it would look like, what other people would notice. So that's an exercise. If you have a specific situation where you're dealing with and you want to try this new way of approaching it, you can try to ask yourself the wonder question. What if a fairy come tonight, sparkle some fairy dust on me, and take away this problem I have? What would I notice tomorrow? This question is also a bit provoking, a nice invitation, because sometimes we get so used to our problems that even when they start to get solved, we forget to elaborate the habit we have built around that pain. So going back to the really simple example that is also not, from therapy or personal growth, but imagine that your problem is backache. So because you have backache, when you wake up in the morning, you have to do it slowly, doing certain movements so that you minimize the pain that you have. And imagine one morning you wake up, the pain is not there. You may have the tendency out of habit to step out of your bed in the same way because you're used to it. And you may not even notice that the back pain is not there anymore. That's what I'm talking about. When you focus on the wonder question, when you ask yourself, what would I notice? You start to notice, you start to reflect on what would actually change when you have your problem lifted. Because either the fairy with the fairy dust lifted, or you solve it by doing some work on yourself. There is a process where you have to let go of some habits that were built around the problem. And that's a process that sometimes happens naturally, but often doesn't, or not completely. And it's really interesting, your system has been working in a certain way, has adapted to that problem, and has built almost some certain certainty, it's functioning with the problem. It's adjusted to the problem. Is the system ready for the solution? Do you have what you need to have an adapted system that can embrace the solution? That's also an interesting point. When you work in yourself, when you live with a more awake mind to desire, to what you actually want, to fantasizing about what you would like with pleasure, without feeling, oh, that's not there. If I desire too much, I'm too sad because I don't have all these things I desire. But when you are in the place of, wow, it would be nice. Next year I can try to make this and this happen, or it would be beautiful, and fantasizing about the things you desire. You enter in a state where your system is ready also for the beautiful things you desire, for the changes you want, for the solutions that you are envisioning. So this is just a reflection on how, reflect on how it is for you. In are there areas where you are actually a bit focused on the problem, and where is there space to open up to desire, to what you actually want, to the ideal situation, to play with the fairy dust? And when you play with the fairy dust, you can play and say, okay, just solve all my work problem and just focus only on your work, for instance, or solve all my, I don't know, issue with a specific part of my life, and see how it is, see if it is easy for you, or if there is something blocking your opening to desire and pleasure in your life. Because for how ludic it sounds, is actually a really effective way to work on your development, and also a way that is really pleasurable. And that was not that common years back when I started to do personal development 30 years ago. Pleasure was not really in the menu of personal development, but it's actually much more effective. And yeah, if it's pleasurable, you want more, and you do more, and you get quicker results, obviously. I hope this was of help. If you have any comment or question, let me know. Take care, and I'll see you next time.